Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Sox On Tap.
Tony, my first reaction is just, fuck yes, let's go.
Sox versus return. That's where it all starts. It all starts taking care of business in-house in the Central Division.
That's right, I'm a meatball.
You got to bring that top button swag, baby.
It is always great to beat the Cubs.
And I'm a homer, so I always say they're gonna.
Dallas Keuchel Lancelin got some beards that you should be afraid of.
What everybody said when he gets out there, it's me versus the other guy, and I'm going to beat him. So I just love that mentality. It's cool and fucking tough.
Steve, would you say that Tony is mad online?
I would definitely say that.
The White Sox winner.
Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome in to a Sunday Funday edition of Sox On Tap. It's Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve. We've got some White Sox news to get to today, and we'll talk a little hot stove action. But before we do, be sure you're going to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. I'm here with Steve. Steve, how you doing? Thanksgiving weekend. White Sox news to talk about. Hope you're doing well. Let's hear how you are today on this Sunday.
Hey, yo, Anthony, I'm running on fumes right now. Didn't get in bed till about 3 o'clock this morning here. Did not get a very good night's sleep, so not very well rested, but I'm committed to excellence, so I'm here continuing to fight and push forward.
Hey, there you go, Steve. That's all we can ask for. Did you get the chance to watch the Justin Fieldsless Bears this morning?
Darn, I missed that, but apparently I still made some fucking losers on Twitter.com mad online. Jeez, how terrible.
It's like your favorite Sunday tradition, isn't it, at this point?
Fucking losers.
All right.
Well, such a mentally fragile fucking fan base. It's hilarious to me.
You just have something for, waking up and choosing violence on Twitter.com. I don't quite understand it, but we'll continue on. We've got White Sox news to get to. And let's start with the renovations in the 500 level, Steve. Yesterday we had some news break through that the Sox are going to be changing up the 500 level. I'm not a huge 500 level guy. We'll get to Mike Clevenger in just a second, but I want to get to some fan experience stuff first. 500 level skybox bar. There's not too much additional news around that, but what are you thinking? Are you going to go check this thing out when it's all done?
I'll wait to kind of see what the renderings look like of it. I'm almost wondering if it might be something similar to what the Rockies did at Coors Field. I want to say a couple, 2-3 years ago. I know that's kind of been a thing that we're seeing with some of the quote unquote older ballparks. Cleveland did that a couple of years ago, kind of renovating their upper deck, and then they're doing another renovation here in the next couple of seasons. So a lot of the teams around the league that really aren't maximizing their capacity are trying to find different innovative ways to utilize the space there with some premium seating and some bar type options there. So it'll be a little interesting to see what exactly they do with that. And if it's down the lines there, kind of curious to see what kind of sight lines or how they're going to go about structuring them, because I thought I saw that they're just hacking off, I want to say 8 rows of seats across 2 sections. So I'm a little interested to see what that's going to look like. I saw somebody on Twitter.com kind of mention almost if they wonder if it will be like the Miller Lite landing that is over in right field that replaced the Goose RIPIP. So, we'll see what it looks like. But like you, I haven't been up in the 500 level in quite some time. So if I get up there, I get up there. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what shakes out there. Now, my first thought is, which side of the ballpark are they going to put this on? I know that it would be advantageous for them to put this on the side that is facing downtown Chicago. I think that would align for some good photo opportunities as well as sight lines of the ball field itself. But it's not going to be a priority spot for me. I did see our guy Matt Berkland had an article up on Tap Sportsnet about it, and he brought up the fact that there's really no option up in the 500 level to get certain types of alcoholic beverages, and this might solve that problem because you've got the whole on weekends Nobody allowed down from the 500 level. So, it might be a nice spot for a packed game if you can get there early, get into this little, 500 area, the more premium seating type thing, as an additional spot that you can go taking a ball game from. So we'll have more on that as soon as it's, kind of closer to completion and we know more about it. But I just wanted your thoughts on that. I thought it was an interesting addition to the offseason work that the White Sox are doing. And let's just break into the big topic of the day here, Steve. Mike Clevenger has agreed. It seems like this is still pending a physical to terms on a contract with the Chicago White Sox. We don't have any deal numbers at this time. But we do know that Mike Clevenger is the newest member of your Chicago White Sox pending a physical. Let's just get some instant reaction here, Steve, and then we'll break into what this kind of means for the rotation and all that good stuff.
It's a move to bring in a serviceable back-end major league starter. They have an innings volume issue that they need to address with John Cueto, seemingly not being brought back by the team here, either by his choice or by the team's choice. So we know that they have a void that they need to fill right there, and this is going to prevent them from having to utilize Davis Martin as the number 5 starter right out of the chute in spring training. So that, I think, is a positive thing going with a guy that has had success at the major league level. Granted, it has been a couple of years. Granted, he has had multiple Tommy John surgeries. So there is a high level of risk involved with a guy like Mike Clevenger. The stuff simply has not played up to where it was 2018, 2019, since he came back from that second Tommy John surgery. So it's not a move that is going to significantly alter the trajectory of the 2023 White Sox, in my estimation. I know I've seen a lot of stuff on the interwebs here about just get him into the cat's lab and let him work. I think as a fan base, we really need to caution ourselves with utilizing that line of thought. I know Ethan Katz has had some success here in his time as major league pitching coach. He got a lot of credit for helping to revitalize Carlos Rodon's career. He's obviously played a pretty significant role in helping Dylan Cease, Ronaldo Lopez, Jimmy Lambert, and some other guys. But the wide-ranging assumption that I'm kind of seeing across the board here almost is that he's all of a sudden going to revert back to 2018, 2019 Mike Clevenger just because he's going to be working with Ethan Katz. I think we need to pump the brakes on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing I've seen. The Cat's Lab has been a term that I've seen more today than any other day on Twitter. But just some thoughts here on Clevenger. I like the signing. I think it's a really good name that you've brought in here. Obviously, this was a guy who was linked to the Sox, I believe, back in 2020. Ultimately ends up getting traded to the San Diego Padres from Cleveland. He gave the White Sox fits in pretty much every start that he faced him when he was with the Cleveland Indians at the time. He's just an interesting case. San Diego is where a lot of good pitchers really seem to go to die. The fact that there's the injury, the Tommy John surgery, a little concerning. And then I would say my biggest concerns here, Steve, are two things. And the first one is his strikeout per 9, his K per 9 in 2022 was a career low, including his rookie year in 2016 that came in at a 7.2 here. And I don't really like that number being his career low. And then also his hit per 9 is a career high outside of his rookie year in 2016. He did manage to throw, I believe, about 115 innings. I think he came in at about 114 and 1/3. So there's the volume that you're talking about. I do think there is some upside here, though, Steve, with that Cat's Lab kind of thinking. He's a premium name somewhat on this market. We still got to see what the numbers come out to here. I'm expecting something like 1 year with maybe an option year that if Clevenger does return to form, you're not going to see him back. I would be surprised and shocked if there's 3 years on this deal. But I think at this point in time, They did work some magic with Johnny Cueto last year. And, this is kind of getting that signing out of the way somewhat early here. And it's just interesting to me that the Sox kind of jumped out on this free agent pitching market when we didn't. All we've heard is that they're going to have to go and acquire somebody via trade or, figure out something of that nature to kind of make an addition here. I like the signing. I like that they were somewhat aggressive with it. It is a sexier name than what you could have picked up. So it's got that going for it, but I kind of like the high upside with this. And, if it's a short-term deal and he's, looking worse than what Dallas Keuchel did, you could bounce him out of town real quick. So I think that that's kind of my initial reaction to this. It's a lot of upside for not a lot of risk.
Yeah, a couple things to add on to that. First, as you were talking about the decline in strikeout rate and the fastball velocity, I was just took a quick glance at his page on Baseball Savant. His four-seam fastball was just getting hammered last year, and I think that probably is in some way due to the decline in overall velocity that we did see from him. And if I recall correctly, I believe it was maybe his slider that graded out as his best pitch. So kind of makes me wonder if maybe Ethan Katz is going to take a look at that and see, maybe he needs to pitch backwards the way that Dylan Cease has evolved in the sense of utilizing the slider more frequently to get ahead and not be so reliant on the four-seam fastball that has been declining from a velocity standpoint. So that'll be something interesting to kind of keep an eye on during spring training, especially, and in the early stages of the regular season. As it relates to the contract terms here, I think you're right in the sense that this is not going to be a long-term deal. I'm almost wondering, in some of the speculation that I have seen and kind of heard through the grapevine a little bit, was maybe a 1-year guarantee for about $10 million with an option year on there, and maybe like a $2 or $3 million buyout of that second year, kind of getting that total to about $12 to $13 million. So we'll obviously have to kind of wait and see what the final terms come out to be here after the physical is completed. But if you do that, look, that's the type of low risk signing that unfortunately this team has to utilize because of where they are at financially and because of who owns them. So
and I will say, I mean, to me, we can sit here and go back and forth on the fact of the owner and what the payroll structure is and where all this working within constraints. I really like this deal. If that's what it turns out to be. Now, what I don't want to see is, like I said, something 3 years where we're over $30 million on something where we're getting locked in because we had to go outbid somebody. I'm hoping that it's the opposite this time, because we've seen that with this White Sox club before, Steve, where they're tacking on extra years that they don't have contracts just to get somebody in the door. This doesn't have that feeling, to me at least, that they went out and overpaid for Mike Clevenger. Obviously, we have to wait and see, but at least just the way that they were linked to him and the way this developed rather quickly. There was no mystery team in the sweepstakes that came in and kind of mucked that around. I think it'll be beneficial for him to be back in the AL Central. I will say this though, what a shitty year to try and bring somebody back when you're going to the more balanced schedule. I think that kind of works against the White Sox here, just in terms of his knowledge of the ballparks and of the rosters and of how AL Central kind of works. I know he's been a couple years removed from that, but what you really got to hope for is, I think, something that you hit on earlier, that volume. I'd like to see 150 innings from Mike Clevenger, if possible. And, a little bit of uptick in those strikeout numbers of what you had last season. The other thing that's a little concerning to me, and I was going to ask if you're concerned about it as well, is the fact that he gave up 20 long balls with the Padres last year. Now he's going to be pitching a lot of baseball games in guaranteed rate field. So are you concerned that we're going to see some long ball action off of the old Mike Clevenger shimmy shuffle at 35th and Shields this summer?
That definitely is a concern, but again, I think that's where looking at it and evaluating the pitch mix for Clevenger and trying to optimize his arsenal is really going to be of paramount importance coming to a smaller ballpark that historically does give up more long balls, just as long as, recent vintage White Sox players aren't standing in the batter's box. So that'll be fascinating to kind of take a look at, but it definitely is something to keep an eye on and monitor here because the ball definitely June, July, August carries a lot more at the corner of 35th and Shields than it does with that heavy marine air in San Diego.
Absolutely does. So that's something that we're going to have to look out for. Where do you think he slots into this rotation, Steve? Because, obviously Dylan Cease, as of right now, is going to roll into this season as your number one. You're going to have Lance Lynn back. Michael Kopech. It should hopefully take a step forward this season. Maybe he slots in as your 4-5 guy to start the year. Obviously, Lucas Giolito, he's my number 5 right now, hands down. But you never know where they're going to slot him in. Where does Clevenger fit in this rotation, especially because there's no lefty-righty real mix with this, addition of Mike Clevenger to this. This is a very right-handed starting rotation. It's all righties. So, where does he fit in?
I would say he definitely is in the back end of the rotation there in that number 4, number 5 range, depending on how they want to line him up. I know you said that that Lucas Giolito is your number 5. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. I don't foresee them slotting him in that particular spot. I think he will probably be at number 3 within the rotation. So I think your 4-5 is going to be a combination of Michael Kopech and Clevenger, and however they want to line that up there. So who knows? It could be a scenario where we might be getting Clevenger for the home opener against the San Francisco Giants and Aaron Judge on, I think that's April 3rd of next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Judge does wind up in San Fran. Hey, who knows? But I still think he returns to New York for some odd reason. I think he's back in a Yankees uniform. We'll see. But Clevenger on the home opener. That would be interesting. I like seeing the new toys out there on the field for the home opener. I don't know about you, but I just think that it's kind of cool to see your free agent acquisitions, or years past you've got Luis Robert out there or whoever it is.
I mean, we had Vinny Velo for the home opener this past year.
We did. We had Vinny Velo for the home opener this past year. So it just seems to work out that way. I think you're probably going to wind up right now. We'll have to see, though. There's going to be inevitably some sort of spring training injury that could shuffle this whole thing up. But that would definitely be interesting. A Mike Clevenger home opener on the south side. Steve, any other thoughts from this signing? Where do you want to see the White Sox go from here? Obviously, Katz had mentioned they needed another starting pitcher. They went out and got one. I don't see them really adding another unless there's a trade that involves, bringing a left-handed starter into this rotation. But as of right now, I think you've got this, and then you might add one type of Vinny Velo style depth piece that you can go and shove Davis Martin down just a little bit in your depth chart. But you expect any other big free agent pitching acquisitions?
On the pitching side, no, I don't. I think now they're really going to have to shift their focus to addressing second base and then the corner outfield positions. That's really, to me, the 2 areas of significant need. I know there's been a lot of smoke around this Sean Murphy stuff, and I just don't see it happening. So, to me, there's some rumor going around about possibly Colton Wong from the Milwaukee Brewers, as the Brewers might be looking to retool or possibly do a complete teardown. So there's, some interesting things to be paying attention to about 90 miles north of guaranteed rate field there. So we'll keep an eye on that, but they definitely need to address the corner outfield positions here. I fully expect Oscar Colas to be the starting right fielder for this team when they open up in Houston on March 30th. So what they go about doing in left field is going to be fascinating here. I definitely would anticipate it being some type of a platoon situation here. And one thing that's going to be really fascinating to me is looking at how they deploy Eloy Jimenez in 2023. We obviously saw him DHing almost primarily when he returned in the second half of this year. So it'll be fascinating if that is going to be his role here going forward. If Pedro Grifol and the new staff that is coming in here view Eloy as a primary DH, in which case then you have to really think about left field as a platoon type situation. I've been a big Tommy Pham guy going back to when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's got a couple of 2-tree screws loose upstairs there, but he's a guy that historically hammers left-handed pitching. So if you could pair him with a guy, maybe a Jesse Winker from Seattle, who historically has handled right-handed pitching really well, very suspect defensively. It's going to be almost very comparable to Eloy out there, except he's just not as much of an injury risk to himself and to the other players on the field. But range-wise, Winker is going to leave a lot to be desired. So how they go about addressing that corner outfield spot is going to be fascinating, and they need to do so with the long ball in mind.
Well, I still think, regardless, I mean, obviously we've got the question mark of Jose Abreu still. There's still some, national writers out there who are saying that he could return to the White Sox, and how that's all going to shake out. You've still got the Yasmani Grandal problem of what's his availability going to be, and is that going to force Eloy Jimenez into the outfield more often than you would hope to see Eloy Jimenez in the outfield. I think you're dead on there. It's going to be fascinating to watch how that's handled this season. You brought up the name Oscar Colas. I do believe that we will see him, barring any trade of Oscar Colas, on the south side of Chicago next year. You think Gavin Sheets might still be in some sort of a mix for outfield playing time? I mean, Steve, this team has one outfielder right now, and that's Luis Robert. And even crazier is we're seeing rumors of, I don't know if it has any truth to it, but if you dig deep enough, you can see people that have shouted his name as a potential piece moving this offseason. I don't know if I buy that at all, but crazier things have happened. I don't know what the plan is with this White Sox outfield next year. And if it involves, 100 games of Eloy Jimenez, that you're not going to be able to bank on that because he's going to be on the shelf at some point in time. I don't want to see that. I don't think you want to see that. I don't think any of our listeners want to see that. I want 500 Eloy Jimenez at bats in this lineup because I want to see 30 plus home runs come off of his bat at least 1 year that he fucking plays for this team.
Well, he had 30 home runs as a rookie in 2019.
Yeah, I want to see it again. Okay. And I want it to be in the middle of the order. And if you don't have Jose Abreu, you need that amount of at bats from Eloy Jimenez to be competitive. Like, that's just hands down. So you absolutely need to keep this guy healthy. I did see the Colton Wong stuff as well. I think that's intriguing. I don't know what you have to give up to go get Colton Wong, but I don't think it would be too astronomical. There's so many different hypotheticals here, Steve. I don't really know how this really shakes out, but you're going to have to address something. What do we have on the free agent market that you could even bring in to play competitive second base? Hell, I think it was Scott Gregor throw out there. What about a Cubs Sox trade that brings Nick Madrigal back? I mean, I think I'd rather poke my eyes out with a fork than try and navigate around that. But I feel a trade coming for second base. You're not going back to Josh Harrison. You might bring Elvis Andrews back if he slots over. I don't know, but that doesn't feel like there's a really sexy option here.
Yeah, there definitely is not. And I think Wong would check a couple of boxes. Obviously, he's left-handed. He historically has had pretty good plate discipline, walks at about a 9-10% clip, which is something that this team needs from a lineup balance perspective. The defense did slide the wrong way last year, and with the changes to the shifting rules in 2023, infield range is going to be more important next year than it has been for the last couple of years. I'm someone that has, for 4 or 5 years now talked about the fact that I feel like at second base you didn't need as much range because of utilizing shifting correctly. If you knew how to do it, if you had a manager that was willing to utilize the data and utilize the information, but that's something that's going to change here this year. So you need guys that are going to be able to go and chase down some of those balls in the hole. So it will be fascinating to see if Wong really is beginning that downward trajectory from a defensive standpoint. And to your point, there really are not very good options on the free agent market from a second base standpoint. And, if they fancy themselves a contender, which, we can debate that all we want, going into the season with, Romy Gonzalez or Lenine Sosa really is not a palatable option.
Luis Garcia exists?
Yes, I did. I didn't forget, but I chose to omit.
Okay. I wasn't sure because that could be an option that they're internally thinking. And if
so could Death.
Yeah, well, see, that's the problem, because when Luis Garcia is in your lineup, it really shortens your bench. And I think, just to me, Steve, Yasmani Grandal is a giant waste if he is on your bench as a backup catcher and his bat isn't in the lineup.
I can't envision a scenario in which Yasmani Grandal is going to be the backup catcher on this team.
So you think he's going to be behind the plate for
I do.
100 games this season?
I would say that he is going to be the primary catcher coming out of the chute here when this team leaves Arizona. And if they get to early to mid-June and he is completely cooked, which is a very real possibility.
I think they go reach out to New York and try and get James McCann back.
Whatever. If James McCann is your backup, whatever.
Did we lose faith in Sebi Zavala?
I just never really had a ton of faith in Sebi Zavala to begin with. A lot of people like to take shots at Yaz and his defense, and in a lot of cases it is justified. But I think a lot of those people are choosing to kind of turn a blind eye to some of the blunders that we saw from Sebi Zavala in there. Some kind of haphazard attempts at blocking balls in the dirt, letting a lot of pass balls kind of get away from him. Yaz is obviously a lightning rod because he's the highest free agent acquisition in team history, and as pathetic as that sounds, so he's going to catch the brunt end of the criticism because of his shortcomings here. So, but again, I fully expect that he's going to be the main guy when camp breaks in Arizona, and till June at least, they're gonna try to see what they have with him, and then if at that point he is totally cooked, I think then he goes by the wayside, similar to what we've seen from the likes of a John Danks or a Diamond Dallas Keuchel. It's a sunk cost at this point going into the final year of the deal. So I just think that's how this is going to play out.
Yeah, they're going to have to figure something out here. You talk about if you fancy yourself a competitor. To me, it's kind of the same question, is if you really think you're going to be back at the top of the AL Central, I question whether or not trotting back out Yasmani Grandal with Sebi, because you're going to see a stretch. I just feel it again where Yasmani Grandal is going to be on an IL stint because of the knees. And if you're going to tax him with that workload early this season, then, that's not going to be great for the second half. And you're going to have that second half, much like 2021, where you're going to see a lot of Sebi Zavala. And you've got Perez down there as well. I wasn't really too impressed with what I saw from him at the big league level in this small sample size. But, Steve, I think that it would be advantageous for them to take a look at stuff. I know you mentioned the Murphy stuff. I don't think they have what it takes to get that done. I think it would be just robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, to try and make that acquisition. But they're going to have to figure something out here, and not only for this year, but what's the plan moving forward at catcher? I haven't really looked at what the market looks like next year for free agent catchers, but they're going to have to figure that one out as well. Steve, we talked a little offense. We've talked some defensive stuff. and some pitching. But there's one area that I also want to address before we get out of here, and that's the bullpen. We haven't really seen much movement in anything here. When did the inevitable moves come to continue to build Rick Hahn's Super Bullpen this offseason? Are we weeks or months away from a back end of the bullpen acquisition that the Sox don't need to make?
If history is any guide, probably. I feel that is just simply not a good allocation from a financial and from a roster spot perspective at this point. They've got dead weight in that bullpen already with Jake Diekman, and let's not forget you've got Garrett Crochet coming back.
I can't wait
next year.
I can't wait for Garrett Crochet to come back. In fact, he is Steve at this juncture my the player that I'm going to watch the most closely throughout his return here to see what value he provides, because I think they severely missed Garrett Crochet and they had to overreact last year to having that piece missing in their bullpen or even as a spot start option. So I'm really excited for the return of Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, it will be good. His absence definitely was felt last year. Obviously, that was one of the main predecessors that ultimately resulted in them going out and acquiring Jake Diekman, unfortunately. The idea of having three lefties in the bullpen is an interesting one, I think, especially now given the rules as it relates to relief pitcher usage and the three batter minimum that exists. I'm not sure that having three lefties is entirely necessary at this juncture.
Could you move Michael Kopech back to the bullpen and throw Garrett Crochet into the rotation?
No, absolutely, under no circumstances. No. That's something that obviously I know there was some discussion about that on Twitter.com, but let's be real about this here. I think Garrett Crochet has thrown more than 60 innings one time since he got to college at the University of Tennessee. So this idea and this belief that he can just transition to the starting rotation, I don't see it. There just simply is not enough volume there. He's going to be on innings restrictions here coming off of Tommy John surgery, so it just simply doesn't make sense. I kind of feel as though he might be on a similar plan to maybe what we saw with Michael Kopech in the 2021 season, where he is a multi-inning reliever, maybe tasked with going to get 5 to 6 outs in appearance and maybe trying to piggyback him off of Kopech, and the two of them together could be fascinating because you can really kind of wreak havoc a little bit with the opposition and some of the platoon games that might be tried to play there. So that's going to be a little interesting to see, but just this whole notion and this idea that Garrett Crochet can become a starting pitcher, I think that fallacy just simply needs to go out the window at this point. It is not going to happen.
Well, I will say I agree with you on this, especially surface level, because just the innings limit that's going to exist. However, I'm wondering if they do roll out, 5 right-handed starting pitchers, if you can throw Garrett Crochet out there against a specific lineup and let him go 2-3, kind of like you saw Michael Kopech do.
So as an opener?
Yes, as an opener. This is the first time I'm ever advocating an opener situation, Steve. So this is breaking news here on Sox on Tap. But I can see that playing out in certain circumstances where you want a left-handed pitcher to be there for the first time through the order, especially the top of that order. I would say Garrett Crochet is probably the guy that slots in right there. You're not throwing Jake Diekman out there like that.
Yeah, and I think that could potentially be a good deployment for Garrett Crochet in a nice way to, again, try to offset some of the platoon advantages that opposing teams might try to create when going up against the Sox. So that definitely will be an interesting thing to keep an eye on here and see if Pedro Grifol, Charlie Montoyo, and the rest of the coaching staff and analytics team within the organization try to utilize here going forward.
And we'll have to wait and see, man. I'm missing baseball extra hard today, Steve. It's just, we're past Thanksgiving. We still got Christmas to go. And then the next holiday is pitchers and catchers.
Whoa. You're not going to mention Festivus
Well, I mean,
Festivus is
for
the
those
next
who
holiday
celebrate.
coming up.
For those who celebrate.
If you don't celebrate Festivus, what are you even doing?
I mean, I don't think I've ever participated in a Festivus, Steve. I'm
You've
unaware
missed out, my friend. Let me tell
unaware
you.
of this mysterious mystical holiday that you're speaking of.
I mean, I know that on Thursday, when it is December 1st, the Festivus poll is going up. It's great because it requires no decoration whatsoever. That's just how I like it.
Okay. Festivus poll. So are you going to share on twitter.com, everybody, the Festivus poll that you put up in your household?
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely put it up there. That is, listen, part of the reason for the season is the Festivus poll.
Got it. I'm super excited to see the level of effort that goes into you setting up for Festivus.
There really is very minimal effort required. That's the whole point. That's why it's perfect for me.
That's fantastic. Steve, do you have any closing thoughts before we get on out of here today?
No, it was good to get on here once again, talk a little bit of White Sox baseball. We had some transactional news, kind of the first one of the winter here with a new acquisition coming into the fold here with Mike Clevenger. So always good to get together here for a little bit, chew the fat, and talk some White Sox baseball.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, we are just about out of time here. Last messages for everybody. I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. Thank you for tuning in to the Sox on Tap Sunday Funday, Mike Clevenger edition. Be sure you're going to ontapsportsnet.com for all of your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. We've got great White Sox coverage over there, talking everything that goes on with the Chicago White Sox. Head on over to the White Sox section and check out all of the work that goes in from guys like Matthew Berklin at Sox and Saint, our guy Besnick, our guy Johnny Nani, Steve, and myself covering the White Sox for you. And Steve, let's hope that there's more White Sox news to talk about through this winter, because getting on here and chewing the fat, like you said, is what keeps me sane through the winter. So hopefully the White Sox aren't done just yet. We've got the winter meetings are just about upon us, Steve. Hopefully Rick Hahn is nice and active during that period of time. So we'll be back to discuss more hot stove action. Thank you all for tuning in. Steve, let's close this down how we always do. White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.